Today's briefing is about a middle corridor and the question of whether this emerging trade route represents a geopolitical jackpot or a trap for Kazakhstan. In this video, we are going to unpack the Eurasia traffic jam, examine the historical Soviet Union's hardware trap, and Kazakhstan's recent strategic pivot from Russia to China, and then review China's Malacca Dilemma driving this entire toll booth economy. From the end of 2025, there is a massive traffic jam happening right in the center of the Eurasia continent. At the port of Aktau on the Caspian Sea, things are completely backed up. Shipping containers are pile high and the grain shipments are stuck in transit. The National Railway Company even had to ban some grain exports temporarily just because the railway stations and terminals were too full to accept any more cargo. If you look further east at the border with China, the situation is just as bad. Recently, 1,500 heavy freight trucks were reported stuck at a single border crossing. For the drivers trapped in this metal gridlock, waiting time are not measured in hours or days, but in weeks. They sit out there in extreme weather, slowly inching forward, just waiting for their turn to cross. Why is this happening all of a sudden? It is because the normal global trade routes have completely broken down. Since last year, the traditional Northern Corridor, which is the railway going straight through Russia, has been severely blocked by the ongoing Ukrainian war and heavy international sanctions. Because of that, companies naturally started moving some of their cargo south through Kazakhstan. But this year, the traffic jam went from bad to worse. Since the Iran war broke out, the Red Sea shipping route has become an active war zone, simply too dangerous for the commercial cargo ship to travel through. With the northern route closed by heavy sanction and the southern sea route blocked by a brand new war, global companies panic. They watch their option evaporate overnight. Now they are forced to funnel all of their cargo into the only safe path left. That path is the middle corridor, which cuts straight through the heart of Kazakhstan. This is exactly why this route is more important and more crowded than ever before. To a casual observer, it looks like Kazakhstan is winning big. With global trade bottlenecking at their front doors, they're in the perfect position to collect the tolls. They seem like an independent player controlling the most important bridge in the Eurasia. But if you look at a little closer, their future depends mostly on cold-hard geography, not just good luck or clever diplomacy. Before all this recent crisis, Kazakhstan's trade was hopelessly tied to Russia. More than 50% of all freight inside the country moves by rail. In the past, about 80% of Kazakhstan's oil export went through Russia's pipeline, and even crazier, over 90% of all land freight moving between Asia and Europe went through the northern route in Russia. Why were they so dependent? You have to look back at history. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union designed Kazakhstan to be one thing, a giant open-air resource mine. The Soviets built Kazakhstan's railroad primarily to extract those raw material and send them to Russian factory as fast as possible. Almost every major railway pointing straight north. But the biggest problem is the physical track itself. The entire Soviet Union built its railway tracks using the broad gauge. That is 15-20 millimeter wide. However, China and Europe use standard tracks that are exactly 14-35 millimeters wide. Because of this tiny difference of just 8.5 centimeters, a modern cargo train from China cannot simply drive across the border into Kazakhstan. When a Chinese train reached the border, it hits a mechanical brick wall. Every single shipping container must be physically picked up by a massive gantry crane and moved from the Chinese train onto a wider Kazakh train. Because of this low, expensive bottleneck, sending goods north into Russian railway system was always the cheapest and easiest choice for decades. In 2022, Kazakhstan decided it was time to make a major change. The war in Ukraine gave them the rare window of opportunity to make a great escape from Russian network. They started distancing themselves by pushing to use Latin alphabet instead of Russian Cyrillic alphabet. They also refused to recognize pro-Russian territories. Most importantly, they focused all their national energy on building up the middle corridor to bypass Russia entirely. On the surface, this pivot worked perfectly. By early 2024, China had officially replaced Russia as Kazakhstan's single biggest trading partner. With trading hitting record highs, container traffic along the corridor has more than tripled in the past 12 months, with over 60% of that traffic made up of Chinese goods heading to Europe. But changing trading partners did not magically fix the train trucks. Kazakhstan simply did not have the billions of dollars needed to rebuild its entire railway network, nor did it have the technology to build modern cargo hubs. That is when China stepped in with massive amount of money. At the Horgos gateway, a massive dry port on the border of China and Kazakhstan that handled more than 372,000 20-foot equivalent units in 2025. On paper, the ownership structure looks great for Kazakhstan. They own 51% of the hub, and China owns 49%. Kazakhstan gets to wave its flag, claim ownership, and collect the tolls. But who actually runs the nervous system of this port? The heavy bridge cranes doing the lifting, the automated software telling the train where to go, and the complex engineer maintenance are deeply tied to Chinese tech and capital. With China's help, they built 10 new bore gauge railway lines. This upgrade slashed the time it takes to transfer the container from 5 hours down to just 1 hour. Yet the volume of the traffic is so incredibly high that the yards are still struggling to keep up. Kazakhstan keeps the toll booths, but China essentially controls the operation. With all this booming traffic, you might assume that China is making a massive fortune off this route. The truth is actually the opposite. From a pure business perspective, the middle corridor is a logistic nightmare and a massive money loser. Let's follow the journey of a single shipping container. It leaves China on the train. When it hits the border, it gets lifted by a crane onto a new train. Then it travels across the endless Kazakh desert. When it reaches the Caspian Sea, it has to be unloaded again onto a cargo ferry. After crossing the sea, the container is loaded back onto a train to climb through the Caucasus Mountain. Finally, it has to cross the Black Sea on another ship, or connect through Turkey, just to reach Europe. Train to ship, back to train, back to ship. This broken multi-step process destroys profit margins. Let's look at the real cost. If you ship a standard 40-foot container from China to Germany, using a normal sea route through the Suez Canal, it takes about 30 to 35 days. The cost is highly affordable, usually between $1,500 to $2,500. But what if you force the same container over land through the middle corridor? Sure, it might be a little faster, taking 20 to 25 days, but because of all the cranes, ferries, and transfers, the actual operating cost skyrockets to $8,000 or even over $10,000. No rational business owner is going to pay a 400% premium just to get their washing machine or electronics to Europe a week earlier. The math simply does not make sense for normal companies. So, if this route is a massive money loser, how is it surviving? The only reason the Middle Corridor is booming today is because of China's support. The Chinese government is pumping tens of billions of dollars from its national treasury into this route every single year. They are giving heavy subsidies to shipping companies and force state-owned giants to absorb the financial losses just to keep the cargo moving. Why would any government willingly burn millions of dollars on a bad route? It all comes down to China's ultimate geopolitical weakness, the Malacca Dilemma. If you look at the map of global trade, you will see the massive majority of China's export to Europe, as well as the energy imports it needs to keep its lights on, travel by sea. Almost all those ships have to pass through the narrow choke points in Southeast Asia called the Strait of Malacca. The problem of China is that these critical oceans are heavily watched and patrolled by the U.S. Navy. In a worst-case scenario, like a full-scale conflict between the U.S. and China, the U.S. could easily block those sea lanes. If that happened, China's economy lifeline will be choked off in the matter of weeks. This means Beijing is willing to pay any price to keep this unprofitable railway running. The goal is nothing to do with making a profit on shipping fees. The Middle Corridor is a strategic backup plan. This is an insurance built deep inland, out of reach of the U.S. Navy. This brings us to a harsh conclusion that shatters the illusion of Kazakhstan's booming success. The heavy traffic rushing across the plains is not there because of natural free market demand. It is there entirely because of superpower paranoia and government subsidies. The current land route boom is basically a mini preview of what a US-China conflict would look like. Kazakhstan truly believed that the recent global crisis gave them the chance to play superpowers against each other. They wanted to become totally independent geopolitical player, but the facto fees they are collecting right now exist mostly as a byproduct of the rivalry between the United States and China. In this new system, Kazakhstan doesn't own the core technology. They don't set the global prices, and they don't produce the cargo in those boxes. If Beijing ever changes its grand strategy, or simply turn off the financial money tap, this golden artery will dry up now. Kazakhstan fought hard to escape the crumbling ruins of Soviet Union's logistic network, only to seamlessly plug their entire supply chain into the security framework of China. At the end of the day, they never managed to become a true player on the board. They're still what they started as, a toll booth on someone else's map. They are highly useful for now, but easily replaceable tomorrow.